On April 15th this year, Samoa Joe was let go from his WWE main roster contract. Over the weekend, Dave Meltzer and others began reporting that Joe had re-signed with the company's NXT brand. We even knew at that point that Joe would return in a non-wrestling role. And that's exactly what happened on the June 15th episode of NXT. I'm Ryan Joy, and I run MinutesToBellTime.com, a website and database tracking pro wrestling from around the world. On today's show, we're talking about Samoa Joe in his new enforcer role. We're also going to talk about other general managers from the past that we love. John Smith is in the house. We have headlines from the past 24 hours, and this is the Daily Wrestling News Show for June 16, 2021, where we sort through all the bullshit in pro wrestling news to find you the truth. All right, John Smith, it was about 5-7 minutes into the show last night where everybody in your living room, everybody around the world was chanting, Joe. Joe. Were you surprised to see Samoa Joe? It's hard to be surprised at that point, right? But
if it wasn't mentioned on the Central Wrestling podcast last night, I would have had no clue that he was coming out because I don't keep up too much with the wrestling news so much, and I'm not on Facebook and Twitter too often. So if it wasn't for that, I would have popped super hard at that one. But I'm glad that Regal's not leaving though, and that we still get Joe. It's like the best of both worlds.
Boy, he was pulling at our heartstrings though, right? I mean, William Regal came out and the waterworks were going. He was crying. It was like, I'd been with NXT since day one. I helped build this thing. I poured the concrete outside, and then I swept the floor for the first time. I did commentary. I've done everything there is to do here, but now I don't feel like I can do it anymore. So I have to bring in somebody new, and Karrion Kross comes out. But William Regal was balling out there.
Yeah, it reminded me of the Mark Henry promo from about 10 years ago that he cut, and then John Cena came out, and then he gave him the world's strongest slam, and that was like his major heel turn. Because at that time, like I bought hook, line, and sinker, just like we all bought the Regal thing last night. So, when they do something like that, it's so far between, you never really expect it. I liked it.
I think it also says something about William Regal as an actor, because you didn't see that a ton from him in his wrestling days, that him being able to do that sort of range. That I was impressed.
Yeah, you know what though? He probably just made the speech that he would make if he was retiring, and doing all that would obviously make you emotional. So I feel like that's kind of like an actor's like technique anyway. To like actually, as if it was real, you do it,
So this situation was interesting as well because Karrion Kross came out to talk with Regal and basically put Regal down. And I'm confused about whether Karrion Kross is a heel or a face, because in that last 5-way match, I felt like he was more of a face than a heel. But last night, man, he was heel.
Yeah, I think they wanted us to stop thinking, is he face or heel? Now we don't have to wonder anymore, because if he's going after Regal, and Regal's like as baby face as you could get in NXT right now. Right. Even though he's the general manager, I don't think anybody's booing William Regal when he walks out. So,
well, it was many, many years ago that William Regal joined Vince McMahon's Kiss My Ass Club, and it felt like that's essentially what Karrion Kross wanted Regal to do last night, is join the Karrion Kross Kiss My Ass Club.
Well, if it was the Kiss Skelet's Ass Club, I think he might have obliged.
Well, Samoa Joe came out to save the day, I guess, and that is the news. That is the news item. Samoa Joe walked out to basically defend William Regal against Karrion Kross, and there were some conversations that were going to be had later on in the day or whatever. Regal, in storyline, was going to be asking Samoa Joe to take over as general manager. Samoa Joe said, no thanks, but I will stick around to make sure you get the respect that you deserve. And they iron out the terms of the agreement right there in the ring. Apparently Joe can only put his hands on people if he's provoked. And so that's what it is. Samoa Joe is William Regal's right-hand man and enforcer.
Yeah, we got him. We got to see him in action right away. 2 segments later, because somebody put their hands on him when he was trying to break up Cole and O'Reilly. I guess it was Cole who put his hands on him, so he threw his jacket off and choked him out in a matter of like 3 seconds.
Yeah, it was a very much a hold my beer type of moment.
Yeah,
because he took Adam Cole down very fast. But now the thing about this is I'm a little confused, because I thought that Samoa Joe could not get cleared to compete, and that's why they were going to put him in this type of role, and that's what all the rumors and the dirt sheets and the sources and that's what everybody's talking about, is Samoa Joe can't get cleared, and so he's going to do a William Regal general manager type of role. But if that's the case, they certainly teased a whole lot of violence last night in terms of him having a stare down with Karrion Kross, him having a stare down with Pete Dunne, him actually choking out Adam Cole. These guys are not going to just sit back and take that. If they do, it really weakens them all.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe they have like this timetable of when he can actually get back in the ring that we don't know about yet. And, they're just setting things up long-term for us right now. And, I mean, the way that him and Karrion Kross were staring at each other, it's already a match I need to see.
Yeah. NXT TakeOver the night before Karrion goes up to the main roster, right? That's the idea. And we were talking about this before the show, and I think it bears repeating that, you said Samoa Joe is the type of guy that could take that belt off Karrion Kross. And then I added that, in fact, he's also a guy that could then lose it to somebody else, and nobody would think anything of that, right? Like, so he, maybe he's the guy.
Yeah, I think they kind of missed the boat with him on the main roster with like the whole Brock Lesnar thing. And, I felt like he should have taken it off of Lesnar for that same reason, because it's believable for him to take down the most, the scariest monster in the world, but then he could also get caught with a Raw roll-up,
Yeah, exactly. So with that, I thought it would be fun for us to kind of put on our time machines and go back in time and talk about some of our favorite general managers of all time. I guess put it to you first. Is there anybody in the whole pantheon of wrestling that when you hear general manager, you think this person?
It's going to sound kind of lame, but AJ Lee, man. Like, I thought she did such a great job being the Raw general manager for that, 6 months, maybe even less. She was so over, and she was so good at that job. I don't know why they had to take it away from her. I was actually at the Raw where she got fired. It was the same Raw where I got my yes sign ripped up by Daniel Bryan. But yeah, like, she was the first person I thought of, just probably because I was there for that. And then also Jack Tunney, who was technically the president,
Yes.
not general manager, but it was the same type of role. And it was more of like a backstage, like less involved than what William Regal is.
Right.
Regal doesn't really get involved too much. And Jack Tunney got involved less, but it mattered a lot when he did get involved.
Right. Jack Tunney, he's one of my favorite. This is kind of my favorite style, is the guy who only gets involved when there's like the extreme controversy, right? Like if Ted DiBiase is trying to buy the WWF championship, Jack Tunney is going to be in there to stop it and announce the tournament and stuff like that. That's the kind of Jack Tunney involvement we got. Gorilla Monsoon was kind of similar in that same role. He came after Tunney, and then Roddy Piper was there when Gorilla Monsoon got Vader bombed and stuff. So, those are kind of my favorite. Now, I say that when my favorite authority figure right now is Scott D'Amore on Impact. So even Scott is involved on every single show. He's a reoccurring character, but I just think he's so witty and funny the way he does things that I enjoy him so much.
Yeah, I didn't even consider other promotions when I was thinking about this, to be honest with you. But, I love the work that D'Amore is doing. And you know what? I love the work that Callis is doing, too, even though he's not technically a general manager, but he has been in the past. Right. I think he's so good at just talking in general. So, and
then, of course, maybe the biggest one of all time in terms of authority figures is Mr. McMahon himself, right? I mean, that whole Attitude Era was circling around the fact that McMahon was in charge, and then you had the Stephanie threats and the Shane threats, and Triple H and the Authority, and you had that came much later, but you had this centralized McMahon group that was in charge, and then at some point like Linda would come in and threaten Vince and stuff like that, and that made for a whole decade of storylines. So.
Yeah, and then Ric Flair came in and bought part of the company, so him and Vince were like co-owners at one point. That was pretty fun.
Yes, and then Eric Bischoff too. So you had his WCW run where he was sort of the evil guy in charge. How do we ever overcome this guy? And then he came in and he was a general manager of Raw and SmackDown for a period of time. So
yeah, I think Bischoff did it pretty naturally. He was great at being the heel general manager with the 3-minute warning and everything. So, yeah, honorable mention to Bischoff there.
Yes. And Al says, I like when it was Bischoff versus Heyman as the GMs of Raw and SmackDown against each other. And I don't think he's talking about like a year and a half ago when they were both running the shows in a silent way. I think he's talking when they were both on screen. Yes, those were good times. Now, BJ Pavanka, he is coming in to tell us, he's chiming in on the Samoa Joe getting physical and in stare downs with some of the other talent on NXT, saying he's not sure that it really hurts him. It might not be much different than when Adam Pearce is on the main roster and he gets pushed around. Well, except for we really want to see that Samoa Joe Karrion Kross match, or we want to see Samoa Joe versus Adam Cole, and we want to see Samoa Joe versus Pete Dunne. I could care less if Adam Pearce fights anybody. But
yeah, plus Adam Pearce came out of nowhere. Unless you were an NWA fan, you never knew who he was to begin with, and it was just like me personally. I was like, who the hell is this guy? The first time he was on screen, like telling people what to do backstage, or like he was like rallying the troops for something. I think that's one of the first segments they put him in, and I was just like, who the heck is this guy? So I mean, we don't even care about him yet. Well, we definitely care about radio. He's been part of our wrestling lives for 30 years now.
Exactly. John, any other thoughts on general managership before we close the segment?
No. I think we covered most of the bases there.
Yeah. So Jack Tunney is the MVP, with Samoa Joe maybe following right behind him. We'll see. So, okay, let's move on to the headlines portion of the show. But before we get there, we've got to do a commercial so that you know how you can support the Daily Wrestling News Show. If you love the Daily Wrestling News Show, then I want to tell you how you can support us. First, check out bodyslamclothes.com. You can get a variety of shirts for just $20, and all of them come in the super soft style, and the price you see includes all sizes and shipping. Get 10% off 2 or more shirts with the promo code SHIRTS10. Go to bodyslamclothes.com right now to check it out. And join Joey Jarzanka, Ian Schreier, and Rob DeLuca on Friday nights for the Primetime Rundown. They take you through the world of sports. The show kicks off at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And each Tuesday, Al Carl hosts the Essential Wrestling Podcast alongside John Smith, myself, John DeConnie, and Gary Mahaffey. It's another week of updates and highlights in the world of wrestling. Here are our analysis on who we think is going to win the week's matches. Coverage begins at 6 p.m. on the Eastern Observer. And Pro Wrestling Pick'em. It's a place where you can join or host a Pick'em League to test your predictive skills in the world of pro wrestling. Create an account and join a league now at ProWrestlingPick'em.com so you can play against your friends or play against the universe. And the Body Slam Brigade newsletter, currently going out to over 4,200 people each Friday. It consolidates all the top stories in professional wrestling into a quick-to-read email written by me, for you, for free. Sign up now at bodyslambrigade.com. And of course, this show, the Daily Wrestling News Show. We're here every day, Monday through Thursday, and occasionally on Friday. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or watch us live on Facebook and YouTube at 10 a.m. This is the Daily Wrestling News Show, and we thank you for your support.
We gotta name that dog.
Well, Al Carl jumps right in and says, we gotta name the dog Scraps, like Scrap Daddy Adam Pearce.
We'll put it on the list. I don't think we should decide right away.
That's right. We have to have that dog living for a few few months before we just, name him. We can always go back to the birth certificate.
He ended up being the mascot. A year from now, there might be just a big picture of him behind us instead of a black screen.
One day there's going to be a day when I don't have a co-host for the show, and I'll just have to be me and the dog.
Yeah.
BJ Pavanka, while we were in the break, he did put a comment in that he does want to see those people in the ring 100%. Would love to see Joe versus Cross when possible. So BJ, the point there is that if they can't give us that match, it's a little weird that they're teasing that match, because they definitely teased it. So,
absolutely.
Okay, so John, I have been talking all week on Facebook and on this show with Don DeConnie and even a little bit with Travis yesterday. I'm just putting the question out there: who is going to ultimately take down Roman Reigns? And I just want to give you the opportunity to answer the question.
I had responded in your thread that I think that Brock Lesnar seems to be the most logical choice. But then again, is Brock Lesnar even coming back? I did hear something about him having, a contract. What do you know about that?
Brock Lesnar was added back to the WWE roster page. So that was a clue that people were saying that maybe he has come back, but nothing has come out official.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could speculate that, but otherwise, who on the roster can do this? Bobby Lashley. Maybe Lashley ends up losing, moving to SmackDown in the roster when they do the draft, and then Lashley can take him down over there because Hurt Business versus the family of the Usos would be with the Usos would be fun.
Yes, MVP versus Paul Heyman. We'll take that, right?
That would be a killer promo, actually. I think Heyman would end up running circles around him because he's just so much better on the stick than pretty much anybody else. But I think MVP could hold his own in there with him.
All right, so John Smith calling for the Paul Heyman on a pole, Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns match. So, okay. Well, John and I were talking. Go ahead.
Or Bobby Lashley.
We were talking before the show went on the air about some stuff that I thought might have been in the rumor territory, but then I saw that Impact retweeted it. So Impact has a Slammiversary announcement coming tomorrow at noon. Apparently, they are talking about a dangerous stipulation match for Slammiversary. We have no idea what it is. We don't know if it's about the world title or the X Division or what it is, but a major announcement coming tomorrow.
Yeah, if it's about the world title, then maybe we'll see a rematch with Moose because Sammy's fired for now. Or if it's not about that, what about bringing back the Ultimate X?
There you go. I think that's what some people are speculating. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never seen an Ultimate X match live yet because I've only been following about a year now. So do you know when the last time they had one was off the top of your head?
I don't, but if people are watching and know, please put a comment in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll look it up right now, actually. Continue.
Okay. Well, one of the former TNA announcers and also WCW announcer, Don West, has brain lymphoma, and he'll be undergoing chemotherapy. So he's hoping to make a recovery. He's got a positive outlook, but of course, best wishes to him because that's a major deal to be working through. And then John, Forbes is doing an article on AEW and Tony Khan, and there is a really good quote in it from Tony's dad in the article. And he basically says that when Tony decided to launch AEW and spend tens of millions of dollars in the process of doing it, Chad just said, I absolutely didn't think it was a good idea, but I told Tony, look, when I'm dead and gone, I'm going to be leaving you and your sister a lot of money. Why don't you blow some of that while I'm alive? So I just thought that was the best quote from Tony Khan's dad.
That's the type of dad that I think we should all strive to be.
There you go. What did you find out about the Ultimate X?
Johnny Impact beat Ace Austin, Dante Fox, Jake Christ, and Pat Buck on April 4th, 2019. So it's been a while, but it hasn't been too long. I thought it would have been like 5 or 6 years ago.
Well, Johnny Impact, he's wrestling over on WWE now. He's Johnny Morrison, and Pat Buck is an agent on WWE. So I guess They can't bring those characters back. We got a match, John, for the Great American Bash on July 6th. The first match we have is a repeat, something we've seen a bunch of times recently, but this is supposed to be a standard one-on-one match, not an unsanctioned match, not a Undisputed Era t-shirt on a pole match. It is going to be Kyle O'Reilly versus Adam Cole one-on-one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to end up just being a standard one-on-one match. Or, I mean, it will stay one-on-one, but like a standard wrestling match. You got to put some sort of stipulation here. Maybe throw a cage around him or put him in that fight pit or whatever they call it. Mm-hmm. Although that is kind of Thatcher's thing, but I think they could make an exception for those two.
I think they should make Bobby Fish the special guest referee. I think that'll be. And Roderick Strong, he has been gone for all this time. He's come back for this angle, I think.
Yeah, maybe he comes back and aligns himself with Adam Cole. You know, I think that would be a nice swerve because it just seems like Adam Cole's like, yeah, those guys were dead weight for me. But then Roddy's like, no, but I love you or something.
Right. And then for next week, we have some stuff that they announced, including the most intriguing thing to me, the thing they've been hyping for months, the Diamond Mine. I don't know what it is, but it opens next week.
Yeah, it's weird that they use not debuting, but it opens next week. Does this end up being something sort of like Raw Underground, but different?
It has to be, right? That's what I think it is. Now, there is a precedence for some really popular stuff in indie wrestling. Josh Barnett's Bloodsport is not like a MMA cage thing, but it's basically a shoot wrestling match. It's not a shoot. I'm sorry. It's a worked shoot, so to speak. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like a worked MMA fight. And maybe that's the style that they're going to go for. I don't know, but we really don't know anything about it except that they've got some graphics and they use the word Diamond Mine.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, you got to trust what Triple H puts on TV. And I don't think anything really busts once it hits the TV for us on NXT.
Yeah, and Raw Underground was a bust, I think, because they didn't establish any rules. They didn't really have anything going on with that. It was not easy to understand what storylines were weaving through. So hopefully this is different. And I think you're right. You can probably trust in Triple H on this. I think that they've probably done their homework and figured out that it work. So.
Yeah.
Adam Cole will be in single competition next week. Kyle O'Reilly versus Kushida. That match should be awesome.
Yeah, and they got to pick their own opponents. So Kyle O'Reilly went with the tough test of Kushida, but then with the caveat that he's not accepting the open challenge in the process. So I think we already know that he's going to win, or maybe not. Maybe they did that to give us a little tiny swerve there. But I think that Adam Cole might end up picking Leon Ruff if he's available.
Leon Ruff might be too formidable opponent for what Adam Cole wants to do. I think he's probably good. He may pick somebody, even borrow somebody from 205 Live or something.
Yeah, like August Gray or something like that.
Well, what they could do here, and what would be maybe a very intelligent thing to do, you take Adam Cole, who's maybe one of the best, maybe the best wrestler they have on the NXT roster. BJ, don't at me. But they can bring somebody in to have a competitive match with him, and they might make that person, similar to what Leon Ruff did with Gargano. If somebody comes in and has a competitive match with Adam Cole, if there were a no name before, they're a name now. So they may use that as an opportunity.
Yeah, that's not usually the MO of NXT. So if they do it, then you know that there's going to be a good reason behind it.
Right. And then we have the encore presentation of Frankie Monet's global premiere. That is what is on the docket for next week. I don't know who she's going to wrestle, but
maybe it means she's wrestling the same person again because it's an encore.
Yeah, maybe so.
But she also was trying to drive a wedge between the Robert Stone brand. Maybe she's trying to build her own little posse, and she's trying to get Leah and what's the other girl's name?
Jessie Kamea.
I always forget that.
Man, she's tall though. Jessie Kamea is like very, very interesting member of the roster. She's been around for a long time, a couple of years anyway. We haven't seen a ton of matches, but man, she is tall.
Yeah, she is. If she could bulk up a little bit, kind of like Raquel, not get all like jacked or anything, but just become more intimidating looking, I think she could be a real player, real good character for them to use.
Absolutely. I think she might be one of the next people, right, that they're going to work on, because you got to believe that there's going to be some call-ups here in the short future, and they're going to have to replace those people. So Jessie's somebody they've been working on slowly for a while, so hopefully this turns into something for her. And like you said, she's formidable looking. When you were a kid, John, did you have a wrestling buddy?
Oh, like the big like pillows that were shaped like wrestlers? No, I did not. Unfortunately, I had all the I've always got my King Kong Bundy. I got my son. He's got Hacksaw. They're not Hacksaw. He's got Hillbilly Jim and Hulk Hogan that I used to play with. Those are his toilet toys when he wants to when he's sitting on the toilet. So I had a lot of these guys. Corporal Kirshner. I never had Andre the Giant.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Well, I had a Macho Man Randy Savage wrestling buddy. It was like one of my prized possessions as a kid. I still have it, actually. That's how crazy that is. But the reason I asked that question is that Ring of Honor has started selling Honor Pals, which I guess is the equivalent of a wrestling buddy. They have Roosh, Bandito, Brody King, Mark and Jay Briscoe, and PCO as Honor Pals.
I think that's a real good idea. Like, target the nostalgia of the guys our age with kids. Like the kid's not going to care if it's John Cena or PCO. It's just a little pillow that I can wrestle with. Yeah,
I know. Part of me wants to go buy that PCO one right now, but I'm holding back. We had but AEW Unrestricted podcast this week had an interesting guest. They brought on Preston Vance, and with him was -1. And I have a quote here from -1 that said, Tony Schiavone looked at him and said, "Is there any chance that you're going to do anything in your life besides become a professional wrestler?" And he said, 0%. I'm going to do it because my dad did it, and I ain't going to stop and not relive his legacy. So cute moment on the podcast there. But
yeah.
New Japan Pro Wrestling has rescheduled Wrestle Grand Slam in the Tokyo Dome for July 25th. Now, this was supposed to be May 29th. It was supposed to be Okada versus Ospreay for the IWGP World Championship. Because of Tokyo going back into lockdown and Ospreay getting injured and all this bad stuff that happened in May, that whole event got moved, and they just rescheduled it. It'll be July 25th. The main event will be Shingo Takagi, the new IWGP World Champion, defending against Kota Ibushi, the first IWGP World Champion. So that's the new main event. Should be a great show. They have also announced that their Grand Slam Stadium series is going to continue. They have a 2-date thing in September 4th and 5th, MetLife Dome in Saitama. The last time New Japan ran this building, it was when Okada defeated Shinsuke Nakamura in 2014 to win the G1 Climax tournament. So long time ago for them, but they're returning. Shinsuke, there's a name we know.
Yeah.
BJ chiming in, -1, future world champion. Maybe.
I could see them actually giving him the TNT championship as a child.
Yeah. If anybody in that Dark Order wins the TNT championship at any point, he will be the guy bringing it out to the ring. There's no question there. Yeah, and you're right. Tony Schiavone also asked him, is there anybody that you want to wrestle that's on the current roster when you get up there? And he said, the first thing I'm going to do is go for the world championship. So he's got high ambitions. He said, I'm not aiming anywhere else. So good for him.
Well, he's got more of a chance at it than Cody, right?
Right now? Yes, absolutely. And speaking of the American Nightmare, he has a new project that he announced yesterday, of course. It couldn't be any better. I don't know why he makes these announcements on Tuesday. Doesn't he know that I have his absolute biggest critic on the show on Wednesdays? He's launching the Everything But Wrestling podcast. And now on this show, he's going to be talking about everything but wrestling. And some of the topics, I guess, that are on the first season are going to be Star Trek versus Star Wars fandom, Potter houses, The Office, and things like that. So if you haven't got enough Cody Rhodes in your life, you're going to have an opportunity to find some more on a podcast.
Yeah, that's a must miss.
And on the subject of podcast, Jon Moxley is hosting Renee's oral sessions, I think this week. I think it's out already. And they both welcomed their new daughter, Nora Moxley Paquette, whatever John's real last name is. So
right. Yeah, no, congratulations to them. Happy and healthy baby, 10 fingers, 10 toes. It's all you could ask for, you know?
There you go. And no Dynamite tonight. They're on Fridays this week again, so don't go looking for it. A lot of fans get very irritated. They keep looking for it on Wednesdays. It's not there right now. It's not going to be there next week either. The first week of July, whatever the date is. And then finally, last but not least, Moose, who we know's contract was up. He did sign a new contract with Impact Wrestling. It is a multi-year deal, takes him through the summer of 2023. Apparently, there was a lot of competition for Moose in the marketplace, and he got a significant increase. So good for Moose. This is wonderful. I guess that anybody that was thinking, oh my God, Moose's contract is up, they're not going to give him the world championship. Well, now think twice.
Yeah, so they can circle back to him after Kenny beats a bunch of other guys, or they can go right back to him, at the pay-per-view at Slammiversary because Sammy's fired, like we had said before. I just think this is great for Impact because, and whenever there's somebody who's actually making a name for themselves, they get poached by somebody.
Sure.
Typically WWE, because AEW hasn't been around very long, but now it's, Brian Cage, Hangman Page, they're over in AEW. You got Cross, who got taken by NXT, like Moose would have been the next guy to probably come into NXT or AEW and do something,
And the thing about Moose is, when I first started watching Impact, and he's been around a long time. He's got a history in a bunch of different companies. But when I first started watching Impact, I didn't really think much of him. But his entire presentation since he stole the TNA championship and he was holding that belt hostage like it was a real world champion, he dresses really well. He fits the part of a world champion. So when the day comes that Impact puts that belt on him, I think he's the most credible guy in their company to be holding the championship at this point.
Absolutely. And I think that EC3 program really boosted him up to the next level.
I didn't expect him to win that program, and he did. So
I think we all had him picked to lose that match at the pay-per-view. It wasn't technically a match. There was no pin, but yeah, he definitely came out on top.
Right. I think it counted in the overall standings.
It did.
For the Pro Wrestling Pick'em. Now, BJ chimes in and says, I hate the NBA, laugh out loud. I have no idea what that's in reference to.
Probably because there's no Dynamite tonight.
Oh, yes.
But, the NBA sucked since Jordan retired, so I don't know why. Like, I feel like people think that people watch basketball more than they really do.
There's it's probably like wrestling fans, right? There's people that watch it, and if you're not one of them, you don't know. you don't know, but there's got to be. They pull in a good rating, and they obviously are a big enough rating to preempt Dynamite, which is one of the best shows, not from a ratings perspective, all week. That's outside of Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. So,
right,
and even many entertainment shows. So. In any event, I hate the NBA too, and I also haven't really watched it since Jordan retired. Don't at us, NBA fans.
You can at me. You can at me. I could have this conversation. All they do is freaking chuck the ball. They get down the court, they chuck a three. Down the court, chuck a three. Then they make one out of every three, and everybody's losing their ish over it.
So you do watch the NBA because you at least know that much about it.
Well, unfortunately, like I when I'm bouncing at the bar, they have the playoffs on the TV, like right by where I'm standing. So, like, I'm naturally I'm not going to just look at the wall. I'm going to look at the TV. So I have been watching a little bit of NBA lately, just because of that.
You know what would get me to watch the NBA? If they had a rivalry that ended in a hardcore game.
Or if somebody just randomly swung a steel chair at the other team and, they docked them maybe 10 points for it.
Wasn't that, I know it's not NBA, but that was Bobby Knight's thing, right? Didn't he throw chairs back,
Yes, and then there was also on the NES Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball.
It all sounds good. If you do that, NBA, I will watch at least a few games. I will sample it. John, any advice for the people today?
No, I don't have anything for you today, unfortunately. No words of advice for you guys today. I'm just still waiting on that stupid desktop that I was complaining about last week. It still hasn't come in the mail. So,
man, maybe they listened to the show and realized that you were working them. So, all right then. Well, with the wrestling news out of the way, for John, I'm Ryan. We will see you tomorrow.